I want you to take a second and just try to imagine something for me. Imagine that you are packing up your entire life. You're putting everything you own into moving boxes because you are relocating to, well, a brand new experimental utopian city.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Okay, so like a total fresh start. Sounds exciting.
Right. Exactly. And, the brochure for the city is just incredible. It promises absolute freedom.
Hmm.
There's no police force, no overbearing local government, um, no centralized authority whatsoever.
Like a libertarian dream.
Exactly. You can build whatever kind of house you want. You can say absolutely whatever you want right in the middle of the town square, and your voice can never, ever be silenced.
Because there's no one at the top to silence you.
Right. You don't have to trust corrupt politicians because the laws of mathematics and code are essentially protecting you.
The architecture itself is the guarantee. Yeah, I'm following.
So you move in, right. You build your house, you start setting up a little shop to sell your things, and everything is amazing for, like, the first few weeks.
But I'm guessing the honeymoon ends.
Ugh, it ends hard because then you notice something really strange. Let's say you decide to paint your mailbox blue. And the very next morning, you wake up and your mailbox has been completely covered in this thick gray tarp.
Wait, a tarp.
Yeah, a tarp with a massive, intimidating warning sign plastered right across it. And it gets worse. When you try to sell things at your little shop, people walk by, but right as they try to hand you cash, the money magically vanishes before it can even reach your register.
That's terrifying.
Right. So you panic, you ask your new neighbors, like, hey, what is going on? And they just sort of look down and whisper, oh, you must have upset the homeowners association president.
Wait, I thought you just said there were no rulers here. No centralized authority.
Exactly. That's what you say. You're like, wait a minute, what homeowners association? And your neighbor just sighs and says, well, there aren't any formal rulers, but there is this one guy who decides what color mailboxes are allowed, and he decides who gets paid. And if you complain about it, well, he will make your entire house invisible.
Oh, wow. So you've essentially traded a transparent, accountable government for an invisible, unaccountable autocrat.
It's the ultimate bait and switch. And look, if that sounds like some sort of dystopian sci-fi novel to you, it's not. This is the exact dynamic currently playing out on a real functioning network called the Hive blockchain.
Yeah, Hive, which is fascinating because Hive literally defined its entire existence on the promise of impossible censorship.
Exactly. It's an ecosystem where users are supposed to be rewarded with cryptocurrency just for, creating and curating content online. And the whole pitch is that there's no central entity dictating what has value.
But that's not exactly how it's playing out in reality, is it?
Not at all. Today, we are doing a deep dive into some fascinating, highly critical source material that breaks down how human nature has effectively hijacked this decentralized utopia.
Right.
And specifically, we're looking at the actions and really the underlying philosophy of a central figure on this network who goes by the name the Marky Mark.
Who is a very prominent player in that ecosystem.
Highly prominent. And the goal of today's deep dive is to look past all the dense blockchain jargon, all the technical stuff, and really distill the Marky Mark's true moral axioms based on this text. What actually happens when the messy reality of human behavior just violently collides with the cold, hard math of decentralized tech?
And, just to set the stage here and do a quick impartiality check for you listening, the source material we are examining today takes a highly critical, very specific stance on how this is all playing out.
Right. It's definitely not holding back.
No, not at all. But our job today isn't to necessarily validate or condemn the author's viewpoint. We are just here to unpack the fascinating power dynamics and the philosophical arguments that are presented in this text. We're looking at the mechanics of the claims.
Yeah, beautifully said. So, okay, let's unpack this because
Sure.
before we can extract this figure's moral axioms, we have to understand who he actually is and what tools he has at his disposal.
Right. You can't be the HOA president without some serious leverage.
Exactly. So, to really understand what's happening here, how does someone even acquire the power to become the HOA president of a system that was explicitly designed to have no president?
Well, we aren't just talking about, a really loud guy with a popular blog. We are talking about someone who fundamentally controls the plumbing of the network itself.
The plumbing. Okay, I like that. How so?
So on Hive, the architecture relies on a consensus mechanism called delegated proof of stake, or DPoS for short.
Okay, let's break that down because I think a lot of people hear the word blockchain and they instantly think of Bitcoin, right? where you have these massive warehouses of computers solving complex math problems to mine coins. But Hive doesn't work like that at all, does it?
No, not at all. It doesn't use those massive, energy-hungry server farms solving cryptographic puzzles. Instead, your influence on the network, your voting power, your ability to secure the network, and your ability to dictate where the money actually flows is directly proportional to the amount of the network's cryptocurrency you currently hold.
Wait, so literally your wealth is your power.
Exactly. It is quite literally a system where wealth equals power. That money you hold is your stake. The more tokens you have locked up in the system, the louder your voice becomes.
Okay, so it's a plutocracy by design.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And within this system, you have individuals who are known as witnesses.
Witnesses,
Oh.
which sounds like a courtroom term. What does that actually mean functionally on a blockchain?
In this context, a witness is basically a server operator. They are the people who are actually running the software that processes transactions, packages them into blocks, and adds them to the permanent blockchain.
So they keep the heart beating.
Right. And the community votes on who gets to be a witness, using their stake tokens to cast those votes. So the top 20 witnesses, they essentially run the network. They agree on protocol upgrades, they set the price feeds, they keep the lights on. It is an incredibly powerful position to hold.
And the Marky Mark is one of these top witnesses.
Yes. But the breakdown we are looking at today argues that his power doesn't just come from being a witness. Being a witness is just the foundation.
Right, it's what he built on top of it.
Exactly. According to the source, his true power comes from an astonishing arsenal of secondary infrastructure that he has built on top of the network. He's described in the text as the hero Hive is stuck with, and even has his own sort of romantic tagline, "I like my forks hard and consensual."
Wow. Okay, so quite the persona. But let's look at that actual arsenal. The text mentions a tool he operates called Build-A-Whale.
Yeah, which functions as this massive upvote and downvote mechanism. He also operates various automated downvote trails and a tribe called STEM Geeks. But then there's the crown jewel.
The Global Blacklist API.
Yes, the Global Blacklist API is the absolute critical piece of this entire puzzle. But let's explain why that is so important.
Please do, because API is one of those terms that makes my eyes glaze over slightly.
Totally fair. So the Hive blockchain itself is really just a massive raw database of text and transactions, right?
Yeah.
It's completely unreadable to the average person, just lines of code. So to actually read the posts, to see the pictures, you have to go to a front-end website. Sites like hive.blog or peakd.com.
Which look like regular social media sites.
Exactly. These front-end websites basically read the raw blockchain database and display it nicely in your browser like a standard Twitter or Reddit feed.
Okay, so the blockchain is the back-end database, and these websites are just the window you look through to see that database.
Precisely. Now, what the Marky Mark has done is he built an API, an interface, that these front-end websites plug directly into.
Okay.
So when you visit one of these sites to read an article, the website secretly pings the Marky Mark's Global Blacklist API in the background and says, "Hey, I'm about to show this user's post to the world, should I?"
And if his list says no?
If his blacklist says hide, the website complies immediately, it grays the post out, slaps a massive scary warning label over it, and forces the user to click through multiple warnings just to even see the text. And here is the kicker. According to the data we're looking at in this text, over 50% of the projects and front ends on the entire network use this exact API.
Over half.
Yes.
Okay, now I want to jump in here and just, play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Because if I'm trying to figure this out from an outsider's perspective, if someone goes out of their way to build a tool like a blacklist API to fight, spam or phishing links or whatever,
Right.
and then 50% of the independent projects on the network freely choose to integrate that tool into their websites, isn't that just a free market working exactly as intended?
That's the argument.
Like, I use a spam filter on my email, right? If Google decides an email is a scam for cheap pharmaceuticals and throws it in my spam folder, I'm thrilled. I want them to do that. If 50% of the network is using his API, it doesn't just mean they want it. Why is the text framing this as a hostile takeover?
That is the exact defense that is almost always deployed in these situations. And your spam filter analogy is the perfect place to start. But we have to look at the mechanics of what actually happens when that filter scales up and starts intersecting with people's financial livelihoods.
Okay, how so?
Because if your email provider blocks a spam message, it really only affects your personal inbox. It's a highly localized event.
Right, it doesn't bankrupt the guy sending the email.
Exactly. But on a blockchain, where content creation is directly tied to earning cryptocurrency, and where a single API controls the visibility across the majority of the major access points, it completely ceases to be a mere spam filter. It becomes a mechanism for unilateral governance.
Because it's not just filtering out Viagra ads, it's filtering actual human beings and their ability to earn a living on the platform.
Exactly. Let's look at how the money actually works here, because that is where the real power lies in this whole system.
Right. Where does the money even come from on Hive? There isn't a central bank, right?
Right.
And there aren't advertisers paying for views like on YouTube.
No advertisers at all. Instead, the blockchain itself is programmed to constantly inflate its own currency supply. Every single day, a set amount of brand new tokens is minted out of thin air by the code. This is called the reward pool.
Okay, the reward pool.
Yeah, think of it as a giant, freshly baked pie that just magically appears in the center of the town square every 24 hours.
Okay, so every day there's a new pie. How do people actually get a slice of it?
You get a slice when other users upvote your content. When a regular, everyday user upvotes your post, they direct a tiny little crumb of that daily pie straight into your digital wallet.
Like a penny or something.
Right. But when a whale, meaning someone with massive amounts of staked tokens, like the Marky Mark, when a whale upvotes you, they have the power to hand you a massive slice of the pie. A single upvote from a whale can be worth 50, 100, or even hundreds of dollars.
Wow, just from one click.
Just one click. But the inverse is also true.
Oh, right, downvote.
Exactly. A downvote from a whale doesn't just lower your score on some arbitrary leaderboard like a Reddit downvote.
What does it do?
It mathematically reaches into your wallet, takes your slice of the pie, and throws it back into the center of the table.
Wait, really? It actually confiscates the money you were going to earn?
Yes. If a whale downvotes a post that was, slated to earn $100, that $100 doesn't just vanish or get destroyed. It gets thrown back into the daily reward pool,
Okay.
where it is then redistributed to everyone else who is earning rewards that day. And since the whale holds a massive amount of the voting power on the network, a portion of that redistributed money mathematically flows right back to the whale's own upvoted posts and their friends' posts.
Hold on. That completely changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
That means a downvote isn't just a thumbs down expressing that you dislike the content. It is a literal financial weapon. It confiscates wealth from an individual and functionally redistributes a portion of it back to the person swinging the weapon.
Exactly. Now, layer the Global Blacklist API on top of that exact financial mechanism. If you end up on that list, your content is visually hidden from over 50% of the network. And the automated downvote bots ensure your rewards are permanently zeroed out. The text argues that this isn't community governance at all. It is one man unilaterally deciding whose voice deserves to be paid and whose doesn't.
And wait, there's another layer to this from the source material, isn't there, about who pays for this?
Oh, yes. To add a final layer of deep irony to all of it, this infrastructure, the bots, the APIs, the blacklists, they are actively funded by the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, the DAO.
So the community treasury is paying for it.
The community is quite literally paying for the very system that is being used to police them.
That is just wild. It's like the community pays for a police force, but the police chief gets to write the laws, serve as the judge, and act as the executioner, all completely behind closed doors.
Which naturally leads us to the most important question.
Right. If this one individual holds the power to visually erase you from the internet and mathematically bankrupt you, any user is going to urgently ask, what is the standard?
How is abuse actually defined?
Exactly, because if I'm moving into this digital city, I need to know the laws. I need a constitution, or at least a rule book.
Right. In any functioning legal system, you expect a written code. You expect clear, objective definitions of what constitutes a violation so you can, guide your behavior accordingly. You need to know the speed limit so you don't get a ticket.
But looking at the actual events documented on the network, the reality is shockingly different. The text highlights a total breakdown of this. There's this incredible quote from one of the Marky Mark's downvoting colleagues explaining their standard for entirely zeroing out a user's account.
And this quote perfectly illustrates their whole judicial philosophy.
It really does. The quote is, "There is only so much we can tolerate and a line has to be drawn, and I have drawn my line to the best of my judgment, and Logic Zombie is currently on the wrong side of the line."
I have drawn my line. That is just a staggering admission to make in a purportedly decentralized environment.
It's the ultimate because I said so, right? There is no rule book. There is no constitution. There's just, align,
Hmm.
and you happen to be on the wrong side of it.
And this reveals the very first true moral axiom operating beneath the surface of this blockchain.
Axiom 1. Right and wrong are defined exclusively by the subjective judgment of those with power.
Subjectivity is law.
Yeah.
When justice is purely subjective, when it is based entirely on someone's internal, undefined best judgment, without any transparency, a decentralized system effectively reverts to a digital oligarchy.
Because you can't appeal best judgment.
Exactly. Think about the fundamental promise of blockchain technology. The whole pitch is trustless interaction.
Right.
The entire point of Bitcoin, the entire reason these networks were invented was so that you don't have to trust a central bank. You don't have to trust a CEO. And you certainly don't have to trust a content moderator's mood on any given Tuesday. You just trust the math.
But this subjective standard, this I drew my line philosophy, completely breaks that promise. If the math simply empowers one person to use their quote-unquote best judgment to financially ruin you, you haven't actually eliminated trust at all. You've just shifted it.
Right. Instead of trusting a highly regulated bank, you are forced to trust the daily mood swings of an anonymous user named the Marky Mark.
You've essentially recreated the exact hierarchical power structure that the technology was explicitly designed to dismantle in the first place.
It's basically the divine right of kings, just transposed into the digital age. But instead of a physical crown, the king holds a massive stake of cryptocurrency. The king draws a line in the sand, and because there's no written constitution, that line can move whenever the king decides it should.
So, okay, if the rules are entirely subjective, that leads to a massive logistical problem.
How so?
Well, if you are the person holding the power, how do you actually enforce a completely subjective standard across thousands, maybe millions of posts happening on a network every single day?
Right, enforcement is where the philosophy has to scale. And if you are relying on best judgment, that inherently implies that you are actively judging.
Right, it implies looking at things.
It implies you are reviewing evidence, you are weighing merits, you are applying nuance to complex situations.
Yeah.
But all of that takes a massive amount of time.
And according to the actions documented in the source text, taking time is absolutely not part of the playbook. There's this incredible look into how the Marky Mark actually approaches this daily policing.
This is one of the most revealing parts of the text.
It really is. When he was asked about why he was completely nuking a specific user's account, just downvoting everything they ever posted, his response was, and I quote, "Almost every post or comment he makes is to promote his shitcoin, and I'm not going to waste my time figuring out which ones are and which ones aren't, so I just flag everything."
I just flag everything. Let's really analyze that phrase for a second.
It is algorithmic carpet bombing. Instead of sending a sniper to take out a single, bad post that violates a rule, you level the entire account history. Because the munitions, the downvotes are essentially free for him, and he simply doesn't care about collateral damage.
Which brings us directly to the second moral axiom extracted from the text.
Axiom 2. Efficiency trumps accuracy.
It is the doctrine of the blanket flag. And it perfectly highlights the fundamental trade-off between convenience and justice.
Right, because justice is slow.
Due process is incredibly inefficient. It requires a system to prioritize fairness over speed. But when you have absolute power and you have no mechanism for accountability whatsoever, the incentive to be accurate just entirely evaporates.
Why would you bother?
Exactly. Why would you spend 20 minutes carefully reviewing a user's recent posts to see if they are genuinely contributing to the community today, when it takes literally 3 seconds to apply an automated blanket flag that permanently zeroes out their entire digital existence?
This reminds me of an analogy. It's like a traffic court judge saying, well, look, this guy has been caught speeding on traffic cams a lot in the past, so I'm just going to suspend his driver's license forever right now without looking at the current traffic cam footage because I simply don't have the time to review the tapes.
It totally abandons the concept of due process.
It completely dismantles the whole community governance pitch. Community governance implies a debate. It implies a consensus. Blanket flagging is the tool of an autocrat who just can't be bothered.
And imagine the human toll of that. Imagine you're a user. You spend 10 hours writing a thoughtful, original, highly researched post. The community genuinely loves it. Your wallet interface says you're going to earn, say, $150 from the upvotes.
Awesome.
And then, because 3 weeks ago you posted a link that someone with power didn't like, an automated bot hits your account, right before the payout finalizes, and that $150 instantly turns to zero.
It's devastating. And you justify it by saying, well, the target was in there somewhere, the collateral damage, all those legitimate posts, the genuine community interactions that get caught in that blanket flag. It's all just considered an acceptable cost of doing business.
The system explicitly rewards expediency and aggressively penalizes nuance.
Okay, so we have a system where the rules are entirely subjective and the enforcement is essentially a scorched earth carpet bombing campaign.
A deadly combination.
Truly. Now, if I am a user on this network and everything I write is grayed out, hidden behind scary warning labels, and financially zeroed out by a bot, I am going to scream, I am being censored. That is the most natural human reaction.
Right, you'd feel silenced.
But this network prides itself on being censorship resistant. That's the whole marketing pitch. So how does the architect of the system actually defend against the accusation that he is a censor?
This is where we see a fascinating piece of semantic gymnastics, and it reveals the third moral axiom operating on the network.
Semantic gymnastics, I love that. What's the defense?
The defense deployed against these accusations of censorship relies entirely on a technical loophole. The defense is, quite literally, we are not censoring anyone.
Even though the post is hidden and zeroed out.
Yep. The exact justification given in the text is, there is no suppression of speech, there is no content removal due to downvote. The content is there, and anyone can read it.
The content is there.
The content is there. This distinction is absolutely crucial to understand because it heavily exploits the fundamental nature of what a blockchain is.
How so?
A blockchain is essentially a distributed append-only ledger, meaning once a transaction or a piece of text is written to that ledger and confirmed by the network witnesses, it cannot be deleted in the traditional sense. It exists permanently on the hard drives of all the server nodes participating in the network across the globe.
Oh, I see. So they are leaning entirely on the back-end technical reality of the code.
Exactly, because the text literally exists as ones and zeros on a hard drive in a server farm somewhere in the world. They claim censorship hasn't technically occurred.
Which brings us to axiom 3. Censorship is defined technically, not functionally.
Yes.
But if we look at the functional reality of how humans actually use the internet, that defense is incredibly cynical.
It's absurd.
Yes, the text is technically on a hard drive. But if you are a normal human being trying to read the network, you aren't plugging into a raw database and reading code. You are using a front-end website.
Like PeakD or Hive.blog.
Right. And on those websites, the content is grayed out. The financial rewards, which are the entire incentive structure for even being on the platform, are zeroed out. The text is hidden behind click-to-reveal warnings that honestly make it look like you're about to download malware.
And the source material has this absolutely brilliant analogy to explain this semantic trick.
Oh, the restaurant analogy. I love this one. It states that this defense is like saying, I didn't burn down your restaurant. I just stood at the front door with a megaphone telling everyone who walked by that the food is poison, and I physically blocked the entrance. But the physical building still exists, so I didn't ruin your business.
It is a perfect analogy.
Okay.
Because it cuts right to the heart of the difference between de jure censorship, which is censorship by formal law or physical deletion, and de facto censorship, which is censorship in practical fact. It reveals how power structures evolve when they encounter new technology.
Yeah.
The blockchain promised to make traditional deletion impossible. So what did the power structure do? They adapted. They realized they didn't actually need to delete the record. They just needed to sever the connection between the record and the audience.
Out of sight, out of mind. And more importantly, they sever the connection between the record and the money.
Yes.
If the only way a creator can survive or justify their time is by earning a slice of that daily reward pool, starving them of that slice is a death sentence for their account.
Precisely. If a user's content is visually suppressed, if it's algorithmically buried so no one can find it, and it's financially starved,
Yeah.
functional suppression has been completely achieved. It is functionally identical to censorship to the end user.
The creator has no audience. The audience has no access to the creator without jumping through incredibly intimidating hoops, and absolutely no value can be exchanged.
The fact that the backend code technically stores the text is completely irrelevant to the human experience of being silenced. As long as the powerful can point to a technical loophole, they feel entirely justified in completely ignoring the functional reality of their actions.
It's basically putting someone in a soundproof box, burying the box 20 feet underground, and then saying, Well, their vocal cords still technically work, so they have free speech. It's maddening.
It really is.
But this brings up a massive logistical and honestly social problem for the people in power.
What's that?
If you are wielding this kind of heavy-handed control, if you are blanket flagging people based on a subjective mood, functionally censoring them while playing these arrogant semantic games, how do you actually maintain that control without the community eventually grabbing pitchforks and rebelling? How does one mask that level of authoritarianism so that people don't just abandon the network entirely?
You achieve that by creating distance. You build layers of infrastructure and bureaucracy between the action and the actor. You make it incredibly difficult to point a finger at any single point of failure. Which leads us directly to the fourth moral axiom, which centers entirely around plausible deniability.
The infrastructure play.
Exactly.
When examining the dynamics of the network, it becomes really clear that the Marky Mark has built this massive policing infrastructure, but he constantly maintains the posture of a humble, neutral service provider.
Right. I'm just the tech guy.
Exactly. For instance, the text points out there is a major policing entity on the network called Hive Watchers.
Hive Watchers operates as a sort of decentralized neighborhood watch, but with significant, devastating power to blacklist and zero out rewards.
Right. And when questioned about the relationship between his global blacklist API and this Hive Watchers group, his defense is very specific.
Extremely specific phrasing.
The claim is, quote, "It has no formal connection with Hive Watchers. Some of the users who have access to Steam Cleaner's accounts use it for downvoting privately. Some downvotes may overlap with some downvotes on the accounts blacklisted by HW."
No formal connection.
That phrasing is doing so much heavy lifting it needs a chiropractor. Let's look at the reality of the situation. No formal connection, sure, just informal connections. And shared users operating the accounts, and overlapping downvote targets, and integrated blacklists. But they are totally different.
It's the perfect bureaucratic shield. And it defines axiom number 4. If the connections are informal, the power structure can remain safely hidden.
It's exactly like a politician saying they have no formal connection to a super PAC, right?
Perfect comparison.
I don't control them. We just happen to share the exact same mega donors. We target the exact same political opponents. We use the same media consultants. And our ad campaigns magically complement each other perfectly, but legally, totally separate entities.
Exactly. And the mechanism of the API itself is the ultimate tool for this plausible deniability. Because an API is just a data feed that other people choose to integrate, it completely diffuses responsibility.
How does that play out in real time?
So the Marky Mark provides the global blacklist to a front-end website like PeakD. When PeakD hides a user, the Marky Mark can throw his hands up and say, "Hey, I didn't hide them. I just provide data. The website chose to use my list."
Right.
And then the developers of PeakD can turn around and say, "Hey, we didn't hide them. We just subscribed to the global API for community safety. Take it up with the blacklist manager."
It is a circular firing squad of accountability.
It really is.
The user is stuck in the middle, pointing at everyone, and everyone is pointing at the system. No human being ever has to take responsibility for the outcome.
It's an incredibly sophisticated way to make a massive concentration of power masquerade as decentralized consensus.
But there is a theoretical vulnerability in this setup, a massive blind spot that exposes the absolute core of this
And I
dynamic.
had a question.
Yes. Someone actually asked the Marky Mark a very pointed question on the network, and it's documented in the text. If for whatever reason you find yourself on one or more of these blacklists, because you own the tool, you could theoretically make yourself immune to being listed, right? I am not saying that you would, I'm saying that you could.
And that question was met with absolute silence.
The silence speaks volumes. It exposes the paradox of the omnipotent blacklist creator.
Right. If you hold the keys to the master list, you are by definition above the laws of that list. You have viewed access. You can build a backdoor for yourself.
Which perfectly transitions us to the next and arguably most infuriating issue on the network.
Oh, definitely the most frustrating for regular users.
If the rules are arbitrary, if the enforcement is an algorithmic carpet bombing, and if accountability is hidden behind layers of APIs and plausible deniability, do these rules apply equally to everyone? What happens when the architect of the system decides to participate in the economy he is actively policing?
Well, spoiler alert for anyone who has ever studied human history, the rules do not apply equally.
Shocker.
This is where we see the axiom of rules for thee, but not for me. The hypocrisy regarding what constitutes quality content is just staggering here.
Right, because we established earlier that the Marky Mark patrols the blockchain, zeroing out posts he deems not reward-worthy. He functions as this self-appointed quality police, ensuring that the daily reward pool isn't drained by low-effort spam.
But then you look at his own content.
Yes, parallel to his massive downvoting crusade against supposedly low-effort content from normal users, you see instances where his own accounts are generating $50, $60, $80 in cryptocurrency rewards for posting inserted YouTube gaming videos.
Literally just embedding a video of someone else playing video game into a post.
Right. Nothing else. Now, if any normal user, a quote-unquote peasant in this digital kingdom, were to post a YouTube gaming video and attempt to extract $80 from the community reward pool for it,
Oh, they would be obliterated.
instantly, they would be immediately classified as milking the reward pool. They would be hit with the blanket flag. Their account would be zeroed out. It is exactly the kind of low-effort behavior the blacklist was ostensibly built to prevent in the first place.
But when the architect does it, it's considered fundamentally different.
Why? I genuinely tried to figure out the mechanical justification for this while reading the source. Is there a protocol rule? Like, does the code say it's okay?
There is absolutely no mechanical justification. It just is. It's different because he holds the stake, he operates the API, and he commands the bot trails. Who is going to stop him?
Nobody.
And this isn't just an isolated incident. It speaks to a broader structural issue known as the super whale blind spot.
Right. Let's look at the case of the user named Bernie Sanders.
Oh, this is a classic example.
This was an account notoriously known across the entire network for posting literal garbage, just absolute nonsense, and extracting massive, massive amounts of rewards from the pool. He was widely recognized as the #1 abuser of the system.
In a perfectly functional community-governed system, the other whales would use their immense power to downvote that abuser, protecting the reward pool for genuine creators. That's the theory of DPoS.
But did the super whales, the Marky Mark, Acidio block trades, lift a finger to downvote him? No. They completely looked the other way.
And why? Because he was part of the club. He was a fellow whale.
Which brings us to the fifth moral axiom. The quality standard has a curious blind spot, and it is shaped exactly like the in-group.
It's tribalism, pure and simple, just encoded into the blockchain. We so often fall into the trap of thinking that technology, especially algorithmic technology, is inherently impartial. We say, trust the math.
Right.
But the math on a delegated proof-of-stake network simply amplifies human biases. When humans build a system that relies entirely on subjective enforcement, they will inevitably build exemptions for themselves and their peers.
There's this darkly satirical breakdown in the text of the unwritten rules of Hive Club that perfectly captures this hypocrisy.
I love those rules.
Rule number 7 is the line between quality content and abuse is wherever we draw it. And then rule number 8 is the absolute kicker. We draw it around ourselves.
We draw it around ourselves. It is the perfect visual metaphor. They haven't built a wall to keep abusers out. They have built a fortress to enclose and protect their own low-effort behavior. They socialize the cost of policing the network, but they entirely privatize the exemptions.
It is breathtaking hypocrisy, and it creates an incredibly toxic, psychologically damaging environment for any new user trying to navigate the system.
It really does.
Because if you join this platform believing the utopian brochure, the impossible censorship, the freedom, and suddenly you hit this invisible wall, what do? If the rules aren't written down and the enforcement is completely selective based on who your friends are, how does a regular person even survive?
That is truly the most tragic element of this entire dynamic. What happens when a regular everyday user runs afoul of this invisible line? What happens when they try to use the appeal process?
Let's look at the reality for these users because it's practically futile.
It is.
There's a documented scenario in the text of a new user desperately trying to understand why they are being targeted. They're watching their digital livelihood just evaporate, and they ask the community, quote, "How can a new user like me, without power, face this unreasonable attack from a powerful user? Is Hive a community where the law of the jungle prevails?"
It's a literal plea for mercy. They are begging for a return to the utopian promise of a trustless, fair system.
And the response they receive from another community member is absolutely chilling, because it shows the community has completely internalized the authoritarianism. The response is, "Hope you understand the situation here. You can't go opposite to what the Marky Mark. He's the ruler king. He didn't hear anyone's voice.
He is the ruler/king.
Wow.
When the community itself abandons the illusion of decentralization and openly acknowledges that one user operates as an untouchable monarch, the system is decentralized in name only. The social layer has completely overridden the technological layer.
But surely, I mean, even in a deeply flawed system, there has to be an appeal process, right? If I get a parking ticket in the real world, even if I think the cop was a total jerk, I can go to a courtroom. I can state my case to a judge. What happens if you get hit by the global blacklist?
Well, you try to use the quote-unquote proper channels. Users will go into Discord servers, which effectively function as the unofficial town halls for these networks.
Wow.
They will submit tickets. They will ask questions. The text shows a user saying, "I have asked for help in Discord and I do not receive an answer. I have requested that you indicate what I should do to improve my posts. I would appreciate getting an answer."
And the answer they get is silence. Just the voice.
Total void. There's no customer service desk for a decentralized autocracy.
But the silence is actually the best case scenario, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. Because if you push too hard, if you actually demand an answer, the system actively punishes you for the inquiry itself. Which brings us back to the user logic zombie from earlier.
Right. Logic Zombie's primary crime wasn't posting phishing links or stealing content. His crime was questioning why he was getting downvote nuke in the first place. And the act of asking the question led to more downvotes.
It is a deeply manipulative tactic. It's often referred to as the stop hitting yourself defense.
It's the ultimate catch-22. Let's map out this cycle because it is pure psychological torture for a user.
Let's do it.
Step 1. You get downvoted and your money is taken. Step 2. You ask why you're being downvoted. Step 3. The act of asking the question is retroactively deemed abusive behavior or harassment. Step 4. You get downvoted even harder for asking the question. Step 5. When you ask why you're being punished for asking a question, you are hit with gaslighting comments like, "Why are you so obsessed with downvotes? Why are you being so toxic?"
Which brings us to the sixth and final moral axiom, and it is the most insidious of all.
Axiom 6. Questioning the system is proof of guilt.
It is straight out of a Franz Kafka novel. If asking why you're being punished becomes a punishable offense itself, the system has successfully immunized itself against accountability.
Yeah.
The victim is literally forced to participate in their own gaslighting.
It is the ultimate defense mechanism of an authoritarian structure. If the act of demanding transparency is criminalized, the system can never, ever be audited. Silence becomes compliance, and compliance is mandatory.
The architecture of the blockchain, which was supposed to guarantee ultimate freedom, is instead weaponized to create a psychological trap where the victim is blamed for their own suppression.
Look what you made me do to you.
Exactly.
It's the cycle of abuse codified into a social network.
Okay, so we've extracted these 6 deeply cynical moral axioms from the text. Subjectivity is law. Efficiency and carpet bombing trump accuracy. Censorship is defined by technical loopholes, not functional reality.
Plausible deniability hides true power. The rules absolutely do not apply to the in-group. And questioning the gaslighting is a crime. If we pull all of this together, if we step back and look at the architecture of this control, what is the ultimate legacy? What is the masterclass being taught here?
When you synthesize all of these elements, you are left with a terrifyingly effective playbook. It is a literal step-by-step roadmap for how to successfully conquer a decentralized system from the inside out without ever having to rewrite the underlying code.
Let's walk through this playbook because it really is a work of dark genius.
It is. Step 1, acquire stake.
Foundational.
Completely foundational. In a delegated proof-of-stake system, wealth is the only metric that matters. You must gather enough tokens either through early adoption, investment, or running a witness node to ensure your voice, and specifically your downvote, carries devastating mathematical weight.
You need enough gravity to bend the entire system around you.
Yes, sir.
You've got the gravity, you have the money. Step 2, build anti-abuse infrastructure.
Right, you don't just act as a lone vigilante clicking the downvote button manually. That's too slow. You build the tools that everyone else relies on. You create the APIs, the global blacklists, the automated bot trails.
You embed your subjective judgment into the daily automated operation of the network under the unassailable guise of community protection.
Which leads to step 3. And I think this is the most audacious move of the entire playbook.
Oh, absolutely. Step 3, get the DAO to fund it.
It's brilliant. You convince the community treasury the decentralized autonomous organization, to pay you a daily stipend for running the infrastructure that you will inevitably use to police them.
You are entirely socializing the cost of your own enforcement mechanisms. You are literally making the peasants buy the pitchforks you use to keep them in line.
Exactly. Then step 4. Use that infrastructure to suppress anyone who earns without your blessing.
This is where the subjective line is activated. You weaponize the infrastructure to zero out the rewards of anyone outside your tribe. You eliminate competition for the daily reward pool.
Which ensures that a larger slice of the pie is always available for you and your allies, completely solidifying your dominance.
Step 5. Extract rewards freely yourself.
Now that the competition is suppressed and the community is terrified to question your authority, you activate the in-group exemption.
Right, you and your friends can post low-effort content like embedding an $80 YouTube video and extract immense value from the network without any fear of reprisal.
Because you control the only police force capable of stopping you.
Step 6. When questioned, deploy the semantic defense.
Whenever someone points out the obvious suppression, you hide behind the technical reality of the blockchain. You proudly declare it's not censorship, the data is still on the hard drive. You use the front-end back-end loophole to deflect all criticism.
And finally, step 7, repeat.
You have successfully created a perpetual motion machine of power and profit. You extract value, use that value to buy more stake, use that stake to strengthen your infrastructure, and use the infrastructure to extract more value.
It is absolutely astonishing when you lay it out mechanically like that. The contract between what the Hive white paper promised and what this reality delivers is just jarring.
Night and day.
They promised a trustless decentralization. They delivered a system where everyone whispers, you can't go opposite to the king.
Yeah.
They promised absolute censorship resistance. They delivered a reality where creators are grayed out, hidden, and financially zeroed by automated bot trails. They promised democratic community governance. They delivered a single API controlling the visibility of 50% of the network. They promised proof of brain, this utopian idea that the best content naturally rises to the top. They delivered proof of whether the right brains approve of you.
It forces us to ask a final summarizing question about a figure like the Marky Mark. Is he a mastermind villain? Is he a misunderstood hero trying to hold the chaotic system together? Or is he something much more common?
I honestly think it's something painfully mundane. He's simply a man who saw the opportunity to become the HOA president of a blockchain, and he just seized it with both hands. In any system, someone eventually decides that they are the only one qualified to determine which digital lawns are too long, which mailbox colors are unapproved, and which content creators deserve to earn a living.
It brings us right back to your opening metaphor. The grand, sweeping, utopian vision of a mathematically pure, trustless society is inevitably reduced to a petty, subjective squabble over grass length.
Enforced by a self-appointed busybody who just happens to have access to the nuclear launch codes.
Decentralization is when I control the blacklist.
Wow. That might be the single most accurate summary of this entire dynamic.
It perfectly encapsulates the failure of the utopian promise.
So we've walked through the mechanics. We've seen how the daily reward pool is manipulated. We've seen how downvotes confiscate and redistribute wealth. We've seen how APIs create plausible deniability.
And we've distilled the axioms.
Right. Power defines morality. Efficiency replaces due process. Technicalities mask functional censorship. Tribalism protects the in-group. And questioning the gaslighting is the ultimate crime.
And that leaves us with a profound, lingering question. This deep dive shows us that you can mathematically decentralize the servers. You can open source the code so anyone can read it. You can distribute the ledgers across 10,000 computers worldwide.
But
human behavior, the deep-seated evolutionary desire to form hierarchies, to control the narrative, to build walls, and to aggressively protect one's own tribe, remains stubbornly, aggressively centralized.
it raises an important question for you, the listener, to explore on your own. Think about the digital spaces you inhabit today. In any digital utopia, is a truly trustless system actually possible? Or will our human nature always eventually recreate the very kings we tried to code out of existence?
That is a fascinating thought to leave on.
It really is a heavy, incredibly important thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the systems around you, especially the ones that promise you absolute, mathematically guaranteed freedom. Look for the invisible lines, and we will see you next time.